this day and age, we know why homocysteine levels are elevated, and we also know how to solve it. The second most common reason for your homocysteine levels to be elevated are vitamin deficiencies. It is pretty clear that elevated levels of homocysteine are involved in cardiovascular diseases, including, for example, heart attack, stroke, or blood clots. What is up, guys? PhD's father here, and let me welcome you to yet another video where we are going to be talking about an interesting subject. Today's topic is going to be homocysteine. Let me start with explaining to you what is actually a homocysteine. So, the homocysteine is an amino acid. It is actually produced in the body during the metabolism of methionine, which is another amino acid found in dietary protein, and normally, under normal circumstances, the homocysteine is further converted in the body into cysteine and methionine, especially with the help of B vitamins such as vitamin B6, vitamin B12, and folate or folic acid. But those informations aren't that interesting for you, I understand. But one thing you may not know is that homocysteine, actually, a lot of people have problem with homocysteine metabolism. But for you to understand why this may be a problem for you, first of all, I need to explain what does homocysteine actually do. And for that, let me bring you to the next slide. Now, when it comes to what does homocysteine actually do, like I said, there are two main functions of homocysteine. It is involved in amino acid metabolism and also in the methylation processes. Now, like I said, in the methylation processes, it is first of all an intermediate compound because it is an intermediate in the conversion of methionine into cysteine, which is actually a process that is essential for the synthesis of proteins and other essential compounds. Now, it is also involved in the transsulfuration pathway, which I'm not going to be going deep into because first of all, it is not that interesting. Second of all, it is pretty complex, so it doesn't fit this short, informative format of the video. But the third thing that involves amino acid metabolism is that homocysteine can actually be remethylated into methionine, but that process requires folate and also vitamin B12. And it also involves an enzyme called methionine synthase. And now, when it comes to methylation processes, in those, first of all, homocysteine is methyl donor, which means basically that homocysteine is involved in methylation cycle, which is crucial for the transfer of methyl groups. And those methyl groups are then used in various biological processes, including, for example, DNA synthesis and repair, gene expression, and neurotransmitter production. And those processes are basically a key in understanding why, if your homocysteine levels are deregulated, it can cause a lot of pretty severe problems for you. And some of those are, for example, cardiovascular disease, neurological disorders, and it is also involved in the bone health. In this day and age, it is pretty clear that elevated levels of homocysteine are involved in cardiovascular diseases, including, for example, heart attack, stroke, or blood clots. High levels can promote atherosclerosis and damage blood vessels. Atherosclerosis is basically hardening and narrowing of the arteries. When it comes to neurological disorders, like I said, homocysteine is involved in the production of neurotransmitters. Now, when the homocysteine levels are deregulated, it can cause your neurotransmitters to malfunction, and their production is also going to be deregulated to a certain extent. And this has been clearly linked to, for example, cognitive decline, Parkinson's disease, and also Alzheimer's disease. Now, when it comes to bone health, this is, in my opinion, the least concerning thing when it comes to elevated levels of homocysteine, but there are some studies that suggest that elevated levels of homocysteine are involved or actually are associated with increased risk of osteoporosis and bone fractures. Now, I assume when you know what high levels of homocysteine can do to you, you want to know what actually can cause those high levels to occur. And actually, I'm going to tell them to you right now. So, some of those are genetics, lifestyle factors, and also vitamin deficiencies. Now, at the forefront is for sure the genetic component. There is a thing which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with because it's being more and more talked about lately, but it's called MTHFR polymorphism. That basically means variations in the MTHFR gene, which actually can affect an individual's ability to process folate and also homocysteine. And as a side note, the most common polymorphisms are C677T and A1298C. And those polymorphisms, at least some of them, can cause you to have elevated homocysteine levels without you actually knowingly doing anything wrong. But in 99.9% of the cases, those polymorphisms can be solved, or actually better term is mitigated with proper supplementation. Now, the second most common reason for your homocysteine levels to be elevated are vitamin deficiencies. Like I said, vitamin B6, vitamin B12, and folate most of the time. Now, those vitamin deficiencies can either stem from you having an MTHFR polymorphisms, so you are unable to process a certain vitamins, or you are just not getting enough of those vitamins through your dietary intake or through your supplementation. And last but not least is lifestyle factors. Now, lifestyle factors include anything from smoking too much cigarettes, which is clearly being associated with higher homocysteine levels, but also not exercising enough. For example, if you want to decrease your homocysteine levels, you should exercise at least 3 to 5 times a week. Now, the biggest lifestyle factor that is common for us bodybuilders is, for example, steroid use. With steroid use, you can have elevated homocysteine levels by, for example, damaging your liver chronically, and that is why I suggest you to check your homocysteine levels from time to time, also when you are doing your blood work, which you should be doing regularly. But most of the people do not think about homocysteine levels. Well, I think when you know what those elevated homocysteine levels over time can cause, you understand why it is important to check those levels as well. Now, when you know all of those informations, and for example, you find out on your recent blood work or on your next blood work that your homocysteine levels are elevated, let me tell you how to keep your homocysteine levels in check. Like I said, with MTHFR polymorphism, you may be unable to, for example, absorb certain vitamins from food because it just might not be enough in terms of bioavailability, which basically means how well are you able to absorb a certain thing from something. So for example, if you cannot absorb folate or folic acid from your food because you have MTHFR polymorphism, most of the time, if you want to improve your condition, you are going to have to take methylated forms of B vitamins. Those are generally most bioavailable, but you have to understand with MTHFR polymorphisms, it is a lot of time trial and error. And that is why I want you to consider taking an immediate relief when it comes to lowering your homocysteine levels until you find that right solution for you long term. And that is, for example, the glutathione. Glutathione, or TAD 600 from is one of the quickest ways to lower your homocysteine, no matter what condition you have. Like I said in the glutathione video, if you haven't watched that, I suggest you to do so, because this compound is not talked about enough, I think, and it can really help with tremendous amount of conditions. And one of those is elevated homocysteine levels, because like I said, homocysteine levels are bad when they are elevated chronically. So that means you don't want to have them elevated for long periods of time. And glutathione can really help with that while you are on your journey of, for example, figuring out what's wrong with your particular case. For example, doing a genetic testing to find out the specific variant of the MTHFR polymorphism that you have. So you will know, based on the specific variant, more about what specific supplementation is good for you to target this polymorphism. Because like I said, in 99.9% of the cases, MTHFR polymorphisms with proper supplementation can be mitigated. Now, last on the list that can help with your elevated homocysteine levels is N-acetylcysteine. Like I said in the glutathione video, N-acetylcysteine is the precursor to glutathione, which means the end product is glutathione. Now, it can help to a certain extent, but it's not going to help as much as glutathione itself, because this is the molecule that you want. And N-acetylcysteine can get you there, but it takes a little bit longer, and your glutathione levels are not going to be elevated as much, because this conversion is dependent on your body's enzymatic processes, which are tightly regulated. And after a certain point, which is for most of the people 2 grams of N-acetylcysteine per day, you are not going to get more glutathione out of it. So guys, I hope you liked this shorter video about homocysteine and what to do with elevated homocysteine levels. And I hope from now on your homocysteine levels are not going to be a problem for you. Because like I said, in this day and age, we know why homocysteine levels are elevated, and we also know how to solve it. It's something like, for example, elevated blood pressure. In today's day and age, you have so many means to mitigate high blood pressure as well as high homocysteine levels that there is really no excuse for you to have high blood pressure or elevated homocysteine levels. So on that note, guys, let me thank you for watching the video until the end, and let me know in the comments any questions you might have. If you liked the video, please leave a like and leave a comment with the suggestions of what would you like me to discuss next time. Again, guys, thank you, and PhD's father signing out.